Princess Hana's eyes flutter open to a world of twisted metal and broken dreams. The once beautiful diplomatic ship that carried her hopes for peace now lies scattered across the red dirt of Kepler 442b like a child's broken toy. Her head throbs as she tries to sit up, feeling warm liquid trickling down her forehead. Blood. Her own blood. The silence hits her first. No more humming engines, no gentle chatter from her crew, no reassuring beeps from the ship's systems. Just an eerie quiet. That makes her skin crawl, then she sees them. Captain Jinsu, her personal bodyguard since childhood, lies motionless near what used to be the command console. His eyes stare at nothing, and she knows he's gone. Lieutenant Park, barely 19 years old, is crumpled against the wall like a discarded doll. The sight makes her stomach turn. "No, no, no," she whispers, crawling toward Jinsu on shaking hands and knees, the man who taught her to fight, who always had a joke ready when diplomatic meetings got too serious, who promised her father he'd bring her home safe. Now his sword lies broken beside him, and she realizes he died trying to protect her. Her royal training kicks in despite the horror. Check for survivors. Assess the situation. Find an escape route. But as she moves through the wreckage, hope dies with each body she finds. 12 of the finest warriors in the Velthari Empire, all dead, and she's alone on a planet known for eating visitors alive. The emergency power flickers on, casting dancing shadows that make everything look even more nightmarish. Her reflection in a broken mirror shows a girl she barely recognizes. Her elegant traveling dress is torn and stained. Her carefully braided hair hangs loose and messy. She looks nothing like the composed princess who boarded this ship just hours. Firequist's sound outside freezes her blood. Voices. Rough, harsh voices speaking in the guttural language of the Korth raiders. They're still here, probably searching for survivors to sell as slaves or worse. She's heard the stories about what the Korth do to prisoners, especially royal ones. Her hand instinctively goes to the small energy blade hidden in her boot. It's not much, but it's better than nothing. The voices get closer, and she can hear their heavy footsteps crunching on debris. They're methodical, these killers, searching every piece of wreckage, making sure no one escaped their trap. She holds her breath and presses herself into the shadows behind a collapsed bulkhead, praying to every god she knows that they won't find her. Then she hears something that makes her heart nearly stop. Human voices, speaking in calm, measured tones that somehow sound more dangerous than all the Korth shouting combined. Everyone in the galaxy knows about human mercenaries. They're the bogeymen that parents use to scare children into behaving. Cold, calculating killers who feel nothing and show mercy to no one. 3 contacts 200 meters northeast, a voice says in accented universal. Korth hunting party, probably stragglers. Copy that. Take them quiet. The sounds that follow are brief and final. No screaming, no long battle. Just a few soft thuds and then silence again. Professional work. The kind that makes empires pay attention and enemies disappear. Footsteps approach her hiding spot, slow and careful. A shadow falls across her hiding place, and she knows she's been found. Time seems to slow as smoke parts like a curtain, revealing the last person she expected to see on this forgotten world. Captain Li Wu-jin stands before her like something from a nightmare, but not the kind she expected. His face bears the scars of countless battles, and his eyes hold the weight of too many deaths. This is the man they call the Ghost, the human mercenary, who appears without warning and leaves only silence behind. Their eyes meet, and something passes between them that neither understands. Not recognition, not fear, but something deeper, something that will change both their lives forever. Princess Hana stares at the outstretched hand like it might bite her. This makes no sense. Captain Li Wu-jin, the man whose name makes groan. Warriors Wake Up Screaming is offering to help her. She's seen the wanted posters. She knows the stories. This human has supposedly killed more of her people than any other mercenary in the galaxy. Yet here he stands, patient as stone, waiting for her decision. "Can you walk?" he asks again, his voice surprisingly gentle. There's no mockery in it, no threat. Just a simple question from someone who genuinely wants to know if she's hurt. Her Legs shake as she tries to stand, and she nearly falls back into the wreckage. Without a word, Wu Jin steps forward and steadies her with one strong arm. His touch is careful, respectful even. Nothing like what she expected from the galaxy's most feared killer. "I don't understand," she whispers, looking up into his scarred face. "Why aren't you collecting the bounty on my head?" He doesn't answer right away. Instead, he helps her step over the twisted metal and broken glass that used to be her ship. "Because bounties are for criminals," he finally says. "You're just someone who got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time." The walk to his compound takes 20 minutes through terrain that would challenge a mountain goat. Hana's royal upbringing didn't prepare her for scrambling over rocks and dodging thorny plants that seem designed to shred anything that touches them. Twice she stumbles, and twice Wu Jin catches her without complaint. He moves like a ghost through this wasteland, every step calculated and silent. His fortress appears suddenly, rising from the rocks like it grew there naturally. It's not fancy or impressive like the palaces she knows. It's functional, built for war rather than beauty. But it looks solid, safe, and right now that's all she cares about. 3 men emerge from the shadows as they approach, weapons ready, but not pointed at her. These must be Wu Jin's legendary squad. Tae-ho is the tallest, with kind eyes that don't match his reputation as a sniper. Sung-min looks barely old enough to shave, but she can see the intelligence burning behind his youthful face. Young-soo has the build of someone who could crush her skull with his bare hands, yet he nods politely when their eyes meet. "Boss?" Tae-ho says, glancing at Hana with obvious curiosity. "Everything okay?" "We have a guest," Wu Jin replies simply. "She'll be staying with us for a while. That's it. No explanation, no debate, no discussion of how dangerous it might be to harbor an enemy princess. The 3 soldiers simply accept their captain's decision and step aside to let her pass. She's never seen loyalty like this, not even in her father's elite guard. Inside, the compound is surprisingly comfortable. Clean bunks, a well-stocked kitchen, and enough weapons to outfit a small army. Everything organized with military precision, but there are personal touches too. Photos of the squad laughing together, a chess set with pieces carved from local wood, books in multiple languages scattered on tables. Sung-min brings her hot soup without being asked, and Young-soo finds her a clean blanket. They treat her like an honored guest instead of a prisoner, which only adds to her confusion. These are supposed to be heartless killers, but they're acting more civilized than most of the diplomats at her father's court. "I still don't understand," she tells Wu Jin when they're alone. "My people and yours have been at war for 30 years. You could retire rich just by turning me in. Why take this risk?" He's quiet for a long moment, staring out at the alien sunset through a narrow window. "Maybe I'm tired of wars that make no sense," he finally says. "Maybe I think there's been enough killing for one lifetime." His words hit her harder than any weapon could. Here's a man who spent years fighting her people, and he sounds genuinely sad about it. Not proud, not angry, just tired. She realizes she's never met anyone quite like Captain Lee Wu Jin, and she's beginning to suspect that everything she thought she knew about humans might be completely wrong. The medical bay is nothing like the sterile white rooms in her father's palace. It's a converted storage room with basic equipment, but everything is spotlessly clean and organized. Wu Jin gestures for her to sit on the examination table, and she notices how his movements are economical, precise. No wasted motion, no unnecessary flourishes. Everything about this man screams efficiency. "Let me see that cut on your forehead," he says, pulling on disposable gloves. His voice is calm, professional, like he's done this 1,000 times before, which she realizes he probably has. She flinches when his fingers first touch her skin, expecting roughness, maybe even cruelty. Instead, his touch is lighter than her own court physician's. Those hands that supposedly strangle enemies in their sleep are now dabbing at her wound, with the gentleness of someone handling delicate glass. "Sorry," he murmurs when she winces at the antiseptic. "I know it stings." The apology comes out in perfect Velthari, with the formal inflection used when addressing royalty. Her eyes widen in shock. It's one thing for a human to learn basics, universal language for trade and communication. It's something else entirely to master the complex tonal patterns of her native tongue, especially the court dialect that only educated nobles typically speak. You speak Velthari? She whispers, unable to hide her amazement. He pauses in his work, meeting her eyes briefly before returning to the wound. I make it my business to understand my enemies, he replies, switching back to Universal, but there's something in his tone that doesn't match the words. No hatred, no contempt, just a weary acceptance of a fact he doesn't seem to enjoy, although I'm beginning to wonder if that's what you really are, he adds quietly, almost to himself. She studies his face as he works, trying to reconcile the stories with the reality. The legendary ghost of Kepler Station, the man who supposedly feels nothing and shows mercy to no one, is being more careful with her injuries than most people are with their own children. His brow furrows in concentration as he applies a biopatch to a scrape on her arm, making sure the edges seal properly. How many languages do you speak? She asks, partly from curiosity and partly to fill the uncomfortable silence. Enough, he says, then seems to reconsider the curt response. 7 fluently, bits and pieces of maybe a dozen others. In my line of work, communication can mean the difference between completing a mission and getting everyone killed. She watches him prepare a pain reliever injection, noting how he double-checks the dosage even though it's a simple procedure. Your line of work being killing people like me? The question hangs in the air between them. For a moment his hands still completely. When he looks at her this time, she sees something in his eyes she didn't expect. Regret, maybe, or just exhaustion. My line of work is staying alive in a galaxy that seems determined to tear itself apart, he says finally. Sometimes that means fighting. Sometimes it means healing. Today it means making sure you don't die from infections, because some raiders thought diplomacy was a good target. The injection is so quick and smooth she barely feels it. He's obviously done this many times, probably on his own men after battles. She wonders how many soldiers he's patched up over the years, how many friends he's saved or lost. There, he says, stepping back to examine his work. You'll have a small scar, but the wound should heal clean. Try not to touch it for a few days. He starts cleaning up his supplies, movement still efficient but somehow gentler than before. She notices a slight tremor in his left hand that he tries to hide. Battle fatigue, maybe, or just the weight of too many years spent fighting. Why are you really doing this? She asks as he disposes of the used materials. And don't tell me it's because I'm not your enemy. We both know what my father's empire thinks of humans. He's quiet for so long she thinks he won't answer. When he finally speaks, his voice is barely above a whisper. Because someone needs to prove that not everything in this galaxy has to end in blood. The alarm pierces the morning quiet like a knife through silk. Hannah jolts awake from the first peaceful sleep she's had in days, her heart racing as red warning lights bathe everything in an ominous glow. Through the narrow window of her quarters, she can see Wu Jin's men moving with practiced urgency, transforming from relaxed soldiers into a deadly war machine in seconds. Young Su bursts through her door without knocking, his usual polite demeanor replaced by cold professionalism. Princess, we need you in the command center, now. She follows him through corridors that suddenly feel much smaller and more dangerous than they did yesterday. The compound's main room has been transformed into a tactical center, with multiple screens showing heat signatures and movement patterns across the surrounding wasteland. The sight makes her stomach drop. 67 contacts and counting, Sungmin reports from his position at the scanner array. His boyish face is grim as he tracks the approaching threats. Multiple hunting parties, all converging on our position. They're following the escape pod's energy signature. Tae-ho leans over a topographical map, marking positions with quick, efficient strokes. They've got us surrounded on 3 sides. East Canyon is still clear, but not for long. He looks up at Wu Jin, and Hana can see the unspoken question in his eyes. Sir, Tae-ho says carefully, we could make it out the back way, all of us, but not with... He glances at Hana, then back to his captain. Not with extra cargo. The words hit her like a physical blow. Extra cargo. That's what she is to them, a liability that could get them all killed. She wants to argue, to remind them that she's trained in combat, that she's not helpless. But looking at the tactical display, she knows Tae-ho is right. 4 men could slip away unnoticed, 4 men and a princess would be a very different story. You're suggesting we hand her over, Wu Jin says. It's not a question. I'm suggesting we prioritize survival, Tae-ho replies firmly. The Korth want her, not us. We give them what they want. They leave us alone. Everyone goes home happy. Except for the princess who gets sold into slavery or worse. Young Su mutters from his position by the weapons locker. Not our problem, Tae-ho shoots back. We're mercenaries, not heroes. We look out for each other, period. Hana feels her throat tighten. She's heard this argument before, in different words but with the same meaning. Practical people making practical decisions. Her father's advisors talk the same way when discussing trade negotiations or territorial disputes. Lives become numbers, people become commodities, and moral choices get reduced to cost-benefit analysis. But then Wu Jin speaks and his voice cuts through the tension like a blade. We don't trade lives for convenience. The words are quiet, but they carry absolute authority. Tae-ho's mouth opens to argue, then closes. He knows that tone. They all do. Sir, with respect, this isn't about convenience. Tae-ho tries again. This is about keeping our team alive. We've got contracts waiting, people depending on us. Is one enemy princess worth risking all of that? Wu Jin doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he walks to the window and stares out at the approaching heat signatures on the horizon. Hana can see dust clouds in the distance now, growing larger by the minute. The Korth are coming, and they're not trying to hide their approach. Why should they? They have overwhelming numbers, and the advantage of knowing exactly where their target is hiding. Sungmin, Wu Jin says finally, how long until they reach the outer perimeter? 43 minutes at current approach speed, comes the immediate reply. Young-Su weapon status, full load on primary systems. Ammunition for maybe 20 minutes of sustained combat, depending on how hard they push. Tae-ho escape routes? His lieutenant sighs, recognizing defeat. East Canyon is still viable for another 30 minutes. After that, we're locked in. Wu Jin nods slowly, processing the information. When he turns back to face them, his expression is calm, almost peaceful. Then we dig in and make them pay for every meter. Standard defensive positions. Young-Su, I want those heavy weapons online in 10 minutes. Sungmin, full sensor sweep every 30 seconds. Tae-ho, sir, get the princess some body armor. If she's going to be here for this, she might as well be protected. From her position by the tactical display, Hana watches these 4 men prepare to die for her. Not because they have to, not because someone's paying them, but because their captain decided it was the right thing to do. She's never seen loyalty like this, pure and uncomplicated by politics or personal gain. As Young-Su hands her a combat vest that's clearly too big, she realizes something that terrifies and amazes her in equal measure. These humans aren't the monsters her people claim they are. They're something far more dangerous. They're decent people willing to fight for what they believe in. And that changes everything. The first wave hits just as the sun breaks over the eastern mountains, painting the sky blood red in what feels like a terrible omen. Hana crouches behind reinforced barriers in the compound's main corridor, her heart hammering so hard she's sure everyone can hear it. Through the narrow firing ports, she watches an army of Korth raiders surge across the wasteland like a dark tide, 200 warriors, maybe more. Their war cries echo off the canyon walls, a sound that makes her bones ache with primitive terror. These aren't the disciplined soldiers of her father's empire, or the clean mercenaries she's read about in reports. These are savages who take pleasure in destruction, who wear the bones of their victims as trophies. Contact East Wall, Tae-ho's voice crackles through the comm system, steady despite the odds. 50+ advancing on Sector 7. Copy that, Wu Jin responds from his position at the main gate. Hold until they're in the kill zone. Hana expects chaos, the kind of desperate last stand she's seen in war movies. Instead, she witnesses something that makes her question everything. She thought she knew about human warfare. These 4 men don't fight like cornered animals. They fight like a single organism with 4 bodies, each part knowing exactly what the others will do before they do it. Sungmin's voice comes through, calm and precise. Sniper nest neutralized. 3 contacts down, 7 retreating to cover. Young-Su responds immediately. Covering fire on the south approach. Tae-ho, You've got movement behind the big rocks. Confirmed. Redirecting to secondary target. It's like watching a deadly dance, choreographed over years of fighting together. When Tai-ho needs ammunition, Sung-min is already sliding a fresh clip across the floor to him. When Young-Soo's position gets overrun, Woo-jin appears behind the attackers like he teleported there. They don't need to discuss tactics or coordinate attacks. They just know. A massive explosion rocks the compound, throwing dust and debris everywhere. Through the smoke, she sees Young-Soo manning the heavy plasma cannon at the eastern wall. His massive frame braced against the weapon's recoil as he systematically destroys every piece of cover the Korth try to use. "They're grouping for a major push," he calls out, his voice strained but determined. "Looks like they're tired of playing games." "Let them come," Woo-jin replies, and there's something in his tone that makes Hana shiver. Not fear, but anticipation. Like he's been waiting his whole life for this moment. The second wave is different, coordinated. The Korth have learned from their initial losses and adapted their tactics. They hit all three sides simultaneously, forcing the humans to split their attention and firepower. For the first time since the battle began, Hana sees cracks in their perfect synchronization. "Ammo running low," Tai-ho reports, his sniper rifle clicking empty. "Same here," Sung-min adds. "Maybe 5 minutes of sustained fire left." That's when she sees Young-Soo make his choice. A group of Korth warriors has found a weakness in the eastern defenses, a gap between two barriers that the big man has been covering with his position. He could fall back, regroup with the others, make the defense more concentrated. Instead, he steps forward into the gap, his massive form filling the breach completely. "Young-Soo, what are you doing?" Woo-jin's voice carries a note of alarm. "What needs doing?" comes the simple reply. What happens next will haunt Hana's dreams for years to come. Young-Soo stands alone against 30 Korth warriors, his assault rifle chattering constantly as he pours fire into the advancing horde. They come at him like rabid animals, but he doesn't give an inch. Every shot counts, every movement calculated to buy his friends precious seconds. When his rifle runs dry, he draws his sidearm. When that's empty, he draws his combat knife. When a Korth spear finally finds its mark, piercing through his armor just below the ribs, he doesn't fall. He grabs the warrior who stabbed him and breaks his neck with his bare hands. From her position, 50 meters away, Hana sees the exact moment when Young-Soo's strength finally fails him. He sinks to one knee, then both knees, still trying to reload his rifle with hands that no longer work properly. The Korth surge forward for the killing blow. That's when she sees Woo-jin's face change. She's never seen grief and rage combined into something so pure, so terrifying. The careful tactical commander disappears, replaced by something primal and unstoppable. Woo-jin moves across the battlefield like death itself, cutting through Korth warriors with mechanical precision. Not wild, not uncontrolled, but absolutely ruthless in his efficiency. He reaches Young-Soo just as his friend collapses completely, cradling the bigger man's head as life fades from his eyes. For just a moment, the legendary ghost looks like what he really is. A man who's just lost someone he loved like a brother. Then he gently closes Young-Soo's eyes, picks up the fallen warrior's rifle, and turns to face the remaining attackers. With murder in his heart, the compound's inner sanctum feels like a tomb. Emergency lighting casts everything in hellish red shadows, and the air tastes of smoke and blood. What started as a fortress has become their final refuge, with blast doors sealed and the outside world reduced to the sound of Korth warriors trying to break through their last line of defense. Hana sits in the corner, watching 3 men face their deaths with a dignity that makes her chest tight. Young-Soo lies on a makeshift stretcher, his breathing shallow and labored. The medical supplies are nearly gone, used up trying to patch wounds that keep bleeding despite their best efforts. Tai-ho kneels beside him, pressing fresh bandages against a gash on his friend's shoulder while completely ignoring the blood seeping through his own torn sleeve. "Save the supplies," Young-Soo whispers, his voice barely audible over the pounding on the doors. "You'll need them more than me." "Shut up and let me work," Tai-ho replies, but his hands shake as he applies the bandage. They all know the truth hanging unspoken in the air. The big man who held the eastern wall isn't going to make it out of this room alive. Across the chamber, Woo-jin methodically counts their remaining ammunition. 3 clips for his rifle, maybe 40 rounds total. A handful of grenades, 2 combat knives against an army of Korth raiders. It might as well be throwing rocks at a hurricane. "Sungmin," he calls softly, "how many rounds do you have left?" 12. Comes the reply from the young soldier manning the door sensors. "Maybe 15 if I'm careful." Without hesitation, Wu Jin tosses him one of his own clips. "Make them count." The simple gesture hits Hana harder than any of the explosions outside. This man, this legendary killer, is giving away his last hope of survival to improve his friend's chances by a fraction. No calculation, no negotiation, no thought of keeping it for himself. Just quiet generosity in the face of certain death. She's watched her father's court for 20 years, seen diplomats and generals make countless decisions about life and death. They always have reasons, justifications, complex explanations for why some people matter more than others. But watching Wu Jin care for his wounded friend while death literally pounds on their door, she finally understands what she's been seeing all along. "Why?" she asks during a brief lull when the Korth outside seem to be regrouping. Her voice sounds strange in the confined space, too loud and too small at the same time. "Why risk everything for me?" Wu Jin looks up from checking his rifle's action, his scarred face showing genuine confusion at the question. "I don't understand. You could have handed me over. You could have avoided all this. Young-Soo would still be—" She can't finish the sentence, but they all know what she means. For a moment, the only sound is Young-Soo's labored breathing and the distant murmur of Korth voices planning their next assault. Wu Jin sets down his weapon and really looks at her, like he's seeing her for the first time. "Because it's right," he says simply. The words hang in the air like a challenge to everything she's been taught about human nature. No mention of politics, no discussion of strategic advantage, no complex moral philosophy. Just 4 words that sum up an entire worldview. "That's it?" she presses. "No other reason?" Taeho laughs, but there's no humor in it. "Princess, you're looking for complicated answers to a simple question. The captain doesn't abandon people who need help. Never has, never will. That's just who he is. Even if it gets you all killed? Especially. Then," Sungmin adds from his position by the door, "what's the point of surviving if you become something you can't live with?" She stares at these 3 men preparing to die for a principle that her entire empire considers naive weakness. They're not heroes from the stories, all noble speeches and dramatic gestures. They're just ordinary soldiers who've decided that some things matter more than staying alive. "I always heard that humans were ruthless," she says quietly. "My people. Say you feel nothing, that you kill without conscience." "Maybe we are ruthless," Wu Jin replies, checking his weapons one more time. "But not the way your people think. We're ruthless about protecting what matters, ruthless about standing by our friends, ruthless about doing what's right, even when it's stupid." Young-Soo manages a weak smile from his stretcher. "Especially when it's stupid." The pounding on the doors resumes, more urgent now. The Korth have brought heavier equipment, and the reinforced barriers are starting to buckle. Through the failing metal, she can hear them shouting her name, describing in graphic detail what they plan to do with the royal prisoner. But instead of fear, she feels something else building in her chest. Anger. Not at the Korth, but at herself. At her father's empire, at a galaxy that taught her to see these decent, honorable men as monsters, while real monsters run free. "When they break through," she says, drawing the energy blade from her boot, "I fight with you." Wu Jin starts to protest, but she cuts him off. "No arguments. You've shown me what honor really looks like. The least I can do is die with some dignity." The first blast door gives way with a thunderous crash, and suddenly the chamber fills with the sound of approaching death. But as Hana takes her position beside these 3 humans, she realizes she's never felt more alive. The emergency beacon feels impossibly heavy in Hana's hands, its smooth metal surface warm from Wu Jin's grip. The device pulses with a soft blue light, each flash sending out a distress signal that will cut through space faster than any ship could travel. Her father's fleet will receive it within minutes, triangulate the position, and dispatch rescue ships immediately. She'll be safe within the hour. "Go," Wu Jin says, reloading his rifle with practiced efficiency. The service ladder leads straight to the roof access hatch. Stay low once you're up there. The Korth might have snipers positioned on the ridge lines. Through the failing blast doors, she can hear the enemy getting closer. Metal grinding against metal, voices shouting orders in their harsh language, the heavy footsteps of warriors who know their prey is finally cornered. The compound's automated. Defenses gave them maybe 10 more minutes before the final barriers fall completely. "What about you?" she asks, though she already knows the answer. "We buy you time." His voice is calm, matter-of-fact, like he's discussing the weather instead of his own death. Tae-ho and Sung-min will cover the main corridor. I'll take the service tunnels. Try to draw some of them away from your escape route. She looks at the 3 men preparing for their final battle. Tae-ho checks his sniper rifle one last time, his movements precise despite the blood loss from his wounded arm. Sung-min distributes the last of their grenades, keeping 2 for himself and giving 1 each to his friends. Hyung-soo struggles to sit up on his stretcher, reaching for a sidearm even though his hands shake too badly to aim properly. "You're all going to die," she says, the words coming out harsher than she intended. "Probably," Woo-jin agrees. "But that's not really the point, is it?" The beacon in her hands pulses again, each flash a reminder of the choice she faces. Safety waits just 1 floor above her head. Her father's ships, her father's soldiers, her father's protection. Everything she's known her entire life, calling her home. But looking at these men who've shown her what real honor looks like, she realizes something that terrifies her. She doesn't want to go back to that life. She doesn't want to return to a palace where people talk about sacrifice but never make any, where decisions are based on politics instead of principles, where doing the right thing always comes second to doing the profitable thing. The roof access is through that corridor, Woo-jin continues, pointing toward a narrow passage that leads away from the main battle. "Stay quiet, move fast, and whatever you do, don't look back. Your people will be here soon." A massive explosion rocks the compound, throwing dust and debris everywhere. The outer defenses have finally been breached. Through the smoke and chaos, she can see Korth warriors pouring through the gaps like water through a broken dam. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all converging on this final chamber where 4 humans wait to make their last stand. "Princess," Tae-ho calls out, not taking his eyes off his rifle scope. "You need to go, now." She takes a step toward the corridor, then stops. The beacon feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds, each pulse a countdown to a decision she's not sure she can live with. These men are about to die for her, and she's supposed to just run away. Accept their sacrifice like it's her due as royalty. Hana. Woo-jin's voice cuts through her internal struggle. It's the first time he's used her actual name instead of her title, and somehow that makes everything worse. "This isn't your fight. You don't owe us anything." But that's where he's wrong. She owes them everything. They've shown her what her tutors and diplomats never could, that there are things worth dying for, principles that matter more than survival, bonds between people that transcend politics and species and ancient hatreds. The first Korth warriors round the corner, their weapons raised and ready. Sung-min opens fire immediately, his shots precise and devastating. Tae-ho's rifle barks once, twice, and 2 more enemies fall, but for every one they drop, 3 more take their place. Woo-jin chambers around and looks at her one last time. "Go," he says simply. Instead, she does something that surprises them both. She sets the beacon carefully on the ground, draws her energy blade, and takes a position beside him. "What are you doing?" he demands. "Making a choice," she replies, surprised by how calm her own voice sounds. "For the first time in my life, making a real choice." The beacon continues pulsing on the floor between them, its blue light reflecting off the advancing weapons of their enemies. Safety still waits 1 floor above, rescue still coming from the stars. But Princess Hana of the Velthari Empire has finally decided who she wants to be. And it's not someone who runs while good people die for her. The beacon dies with a sharp crack, its blue light fading to nothing as sparks scatter across the floor. Hana's boot comes down hard on the remains, crushing any hope of rescue beneath her heel. The sound echoes through the chamber like a gunshot, final and irreversible. Woo-jin spins around, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What have you done?" "What?" "I should have done from the beginning," she replies, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. The plasma sword hums to life in her hands, its ethereal blue-white blade casting dancing shadows on the walls. If we die together. For a heartbeat, everything seems frozen. The advancing Korth warriors pause at the sight of the glowing weapon. Taeho and Sung-min glance back in amazement. Even young Su manages to lift his head from the stretcher, his pain-glazed eyes focusing on the impossible scene before him. Then the moment breaks, and hell comes pouring through the breach. The first wave of Korth hits them like a living avalanche. Hana moves without thinking, her royal combat training finally finding purpose beyond palace demonstrations. The plasma blade cuts through armor and bone with equal ease, leaving trails of superheated air that make the very atmosphere sing. But it's not just her weapon that proves devastating. It's how perfectly she and Wu Jin move together. Where she's elegant and flowing, he's brutal and efficient. Where her strikes are precise surgical cuts, his are sledgehammer blows that shatter everything they touch. They cover each other's weaknesses, without discussion, anticipate each other's movements without planning. It's like watching two parts of the same deadly machine finally clicking into place. Left side, Wu Jin barks, spinning to engage three warriors rushing their flank. Hana is already moving, her blade sweeping in a perfect arc that drops two enemies before they know they're dead. The third warrior's club crashes down where her head was a split second before, but she's no longer there. Instead, she's beside him inside his guard, and her weapon is sliding between his ribs like it was always meant to be there. A spear thrust comes from behind, aimed at Wu Jin's back while he's reloading. Without looking, Hana's free hand snaps out and catches the weapon's shaft, her enhanced Velthari reflexes letting her move faster than humanly possible. She yanks the surprised warrior forward into Wu Jin's waiting combat knife. "Thanks," he grunts, ejecting an empty magazine. "Don't mention it," she replies, parrying a sword strike and riposting with lethal precision. The battle becomes a blur of movement and violence, but somehow they're winning, not just surviving, actually pushing back against impossible odds. Taeho's sniper fire picks off enemies trying to flank them, while Sung-min's grenades turn choke points into death traps. Even Young-soo contributes, using his sidearm to drop warriors who get too close to his position. But it's the partnership between human and Velthari that turns the tide. Hana's energy sword can cut through anything the Korth throw at them, while Wu Jin's tactical mind finds weaknesses in their formations that she can exploit. When her weapon's power cell runs low, he tosses her fresh ammunition without being asked. When his rifle jams, she covers him with a defensive pattern that no enemy can penetrate. "Behind you!" she shouts, spinning to block a crossbow bolt aimed at his head. He responds by putting 3 rounds into the archer, then immediately shifts to cover her retreat as she recharges her weapon. They're not just fighting together anymore. They're thinking together, breathing together, becoming something greater than either could be alone. A massive Korth champion breaks through their line, swinging a 2-handed war hammer that could crush both of them with a single blow. Hana ducks low, slicing at his legs while Wu Jin goes high, his knife finding the gap in the warrior's neck armor. The giant falls between them, dead before he hits the ground. "How many more?" Wu Jin pants, checking his ammunition. "Does it matter?" she replies, wiping sweat from her eyes. He looks at her, really looks at her, and for the first time since this nightmare began, he smiles. Not the grim expression of a man facing death, but something genuine and warm. "No," he says. "I guess it doesn't." More Korth pour through the breach, howling for blood. But as Hana and Wu Jin take their positions back to back, something has changed. They're no longer human and alien, no longer enemy species forced together by circumstance. They're partners, bound by something stronger than politics or prejudice. They're bound by choice. The next wave crashes against them like water against stone and breaks just as completely, because sometimes when the right people stand together, the impossible becomes inevitable. The silence is deafening. After hours of gunfire, explosions and battle cries, the sudden quiet feels almost unnatural. Smoke drifts through the compounds, ruined corridors, and the acrid smell of burned metal and spilled blood fills the air. Bodies of Korth raiders lie scattered throughout the facility, testament to a battle that should have been impossible to win. Hana stands in the center of the main chamber, her royal dress torn and stained, her plasma sword finally powered down. Beside her, Wu Jin leans heavily against a support beam, his rifle empty but still clutched in steady hands. They're both wounded, exhausted, running on nothing but adrenaline and stubborn determination. But they're alive. More importantly, they're still standing. Taeho limps over from his sniper position, his left arm in a makeshift sling, but his eyes bright with something that might be pride. 63 confirmed kills, he reports, his voice hoarse from shouting orders. Maybe more in the outer corridors. Sungmin emerges from behind an overturned table, helping Young-soo walk despite his own obvious injuries. The big man shouldn't even be conscious, let alone moving, but he refuses to be carried. Lost count after 40, he rumbles, managing a weak grin. But I think we got them all. All of them? Hana asks, hardly daring to believe it. Every last one, Wu Jin confirms, finally allowing himself to slide down the wall into a sitting position. The Korth don't retreat when they smell blood. It's victory or death for them. The irony isn't lost on any of them. 5 people, 4 humans and 1 alien princess, have just defeated an army of 200 seasoned raiders. It should be impossible. By every tactical manual ever written, they should all be dead. But sometimes the impossible happens when the right people refuse to give up. That's when they hear it, the deep thrumming of powerful engines cutting through the atmosphere. Not the crude roar of Korth ships, but the sophisticated harmony of advanced Velthari technology. Through the compound's shattered windows, they can see lights descending from the stars like fallen angels. "My father's fleet," Hana whispers, her voice mixing relief with something that might be regret. The rescue ships land with military precision, surrounding the compound in a perfect tactical formation. Elite Velthari warriors pour out of the transports, their energy weapons glowing as they sweep the area for threats. They move like dancers, every step calculated and graceful, their advanced armor gleaming in the alien sunlight. At their head walks Commander Jae-sung, her father's most trusted military advisor. His face is grim behind his battle helmet, expecting to find either a ransom demand or his princess's corpse. What he finds instead stops him dead in his tracks. Princess Hana stands in the middle of a battlefield littered with enemy dead, her hand clasped firmly in that of a scarred human warrior. They're both bloodied, both exhausted, but there's something in their stance that speaks of partnership rather than captivity. The human isn't holding her prisoner. If anything, she seems to be protecting him from the advancing Velthari soldiers. "Princess," Commander Jae-sung says carefully, his weapon lowering but not quite pointing away from Wu Jin. "Are you injured? Did these humans harm you in any way?" "No," she replies firmly. "They saved my life, all of them." The commander's eyes flick over the scene, taking in the defensive positions, the careful placement of bodies, the evidence of a coordinated last stand. His tactical mind processes what he's seeing, and his expression shifts from suspicion to amazement. "You held this position against a full Korth raiding party?" "We did," Hana says, squeezing Wu Jin's hand tighter. "Together." For a moment, nobody speaks. The implications are staggering. Humans and Velthari, fighting side by side instead of against each other. Ancient enemies becoming allies in the face of a common threat. It's the kind of thing that changes how people think about the universe. Finally, Commander Jae-sung holsters his weapon completely. "Princess, your father has ordered me to bring you home immediately. The diplomatic crisis caused by your disappearance has brought us to the brink of war with the human colonies." "Then it's time to step back from that brink," she replies, her voice carrying the authority of someone who's finally found her purpose. "Commander, I request political asylum." The words hit like a physical blow. Around them, Velthari soldiers exchange shocked glances. This is their princess, their emperor's daughter, the heir to one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. And she's asking for protection from her own people. "Princess, I don't understand. Not as a prisoner," she continues, cutting him off. "As an ambassador, someone needs to build a bridge between our peoples, and I've learned that it's possible. These humans aren't the monsters we've been taught to believe they are. They're honorable, brave, and capable of incredible loyalty." She turns to look at Wu Jin, whose scarred face shows a mixture of pride and amazement. Captain Li Wu Jin and his men risked everything to save me. They could have collected the bounty on my head, could have handed me over to save themselves. Instead, they chose to stand and fight against impossible odds. And you chose to stand with them, Commander Jae-sung observes. Yes, she says simply, because it was the right thing to do. The commander studies the unlikely group before him. 3 wounded human warriors, and a princess who's clearly found something worth fighting. For, after a long moment, he nods slowly. I'll need to contact the Emperor directly. This is unprecedented. Tell my father that the galaxy is changing, Hana replies, still holding Wu Jin's hand. Someone needs to help it change in the right direction. It might as well be us. As the Velthari ships hover overhead and rescue teams tend to the wounded, a new chapter begins, not just for Hana and Wu Jin, but for 2 species that have spent too long seeing each other as enemies instead of potential allies. Sometimes the most important battles aren't the ones fought with weapons, but with choices that prove who we really are.